Hi, I'm Pat Reber.
And I'm at Aukamp.
And this is Mutant Menace.
I'm Trish Toby with WARC reporting to you live from Westchester, New York, where there appears to be some sort of mutant menace on the loose.
Everybody, and welcome to a brand new podcast about the X-Men. Me and Pat, we already introduced ourselves before the music. I'm not used to doing that, so I feel a little thrown off.
We're innovating.
And that's the thing about this podcast, Pat. We are the most innovative podcasters that have ever been.
That's right. We're two straight white men infected with the woke mind virus reviewing a comic about historic oppression.
And you know what's weird about it is I Googled, and I Googled and Googled and Googled, Patrick, and I could find no other podcast where anybody has ever mentioned the X-Men.
Yeah, it's a sore subject for most people. I've found, when you're at a party and you try to talk about the X-Men, most people just don't want to talk about it.
People walk away from me a lot, especially like if I'm at a Wawa and I start talking to everybody about the X-Men. I stand up on the coffee counter and I start talking about the X-Men. Generally, before I'm asked to leave, everybody else leaves. And so I guess it's probably just like a source of trauma for them. Is that all of them have had some experience with the X-Men in their past that they can't address right now.
I think that makes sense because in a situation like that, people would have to start to leave before they ask you to leave, right? If you're, maybe not. I guess if you're causing enough of a disturbance, but if you're just chatting with people
on the coffee counter.
Yeah. They would have to see that you're interrupting their business.
Because otherwise, because if I had gathered a crowd and people were like, I love this. We love this. Let's sit here and buy more coffee. They'd be like, all right, listen, sir. And they'd come up and shake my hand. And they'd be like, sir, will you come back every day?
That's right. And so that's what we're trying to do for podcasting.
We're not going to be here every day. Well, I won't. I don't know what Pat's doing with his time these days. But what I'm going to do is be here once a week to talk about the X-Men. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about them in chronological order, even the bad ones. We're going to start with issue 1, starting way back in 1963.
That's one of the bad ones.
We're just going to, like, every episode, we're going to take it like 6 issues at a time, maybe less if there's a lot to talk about, and maybe more if it's like a one cohesive arc. And we're going to chat about shit. So Pat, what's your history with the X-Men?
Ooh, I imagine like a lot of people our age, men of a certain age, we were introduced through the 90s cartoon, the X-Men Saturday morning cartoon on Fox. It was that one.
Optic blast.
Rookie.
I was trying to hit the one where Cyclops yells yes, but I accidentally hit the one where Wolverine orgasms.
Matt figured out how to use the soundboard, but not quite how to work the soundboard yet.
Yes.
There we are.
That cartoon, I mean, if you go back, the first couple of seasons are really inexpensively made, we'll say, but
oh my god, yeah,
terrific voice acting. It is the voice that I hear when I read X-Men comics. They had a whole comic line and action figure series associated, so I had as much of that as possible. And then I don't mean this derivatively at all, but I grew up. I stopped reading comics for a little while, and then I guess devolved back into getting into it. So since then, I've really enjoyed.
Ungrew up.
Yes, I've enjoyed chunks of the Claremont run. I have not. There's a lot of the Claremont run that I haven't read, but I do particularly enjoy the Matt Fraction run, the Joss Whedon run, I think is really good.
Yeah, there's just this chunk of time, right, from what early 2000s to like 2010, where there's this. It goes Grant Morrison, and then Joss Whedon, and then Ed Brubaker, sort of, a little. That's a little less. But Matt Fraction and the whole like Dark Reign, Utopia, Messiah Complex, and Second Coming, all those like events, and then Jason Aaron on Wolverine and the X-Men.
Right.
And it's about like where Bendis comes in that I stop really, really loving it.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think I've started going through the Hickman stuff as well.
Yeah,
it's very good. It's a whole new take, I think. So, yeah, Matt, I feel like I'm talking about myself too much. What's your level of experience with the X-Men?
I agree you were talking about yourself. I almost think it's because I asked you, but it could be for other reasons. So I think I've like pretty much the exact same story, only I think my mid-2000s obsession with the X-Men was a little stronger than yours.
Yes, you never.
I think I like. I mean, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I definitely I stepped away for punk rock and girls and stuff. And then I came back hard when I realized the girls would still sleep with me if I read X-Men comics in between dates.
I'm allowed to do this?
And so I think I don't know what made me drop them again. I just got busy with other stuff, but then because of the people would talk about this Hickman run and how great it was, and so I wanted to come back. But because I'd always loved the X-Men so dearly, I didn't want to just jump back in. I didn't want to be like a casual. I didn't want to be a filthy casual about the X-Men. So I was like, I'm gonna read all the stuff in between where I left off and where they are now. And somehow that translated into me starting all the way over from the very beginning.
Sure.
And somehow that turned into me trying to spend thousands of dollars to buy every single X-Men issue in trade. And now I have this huge IKEA Billy bookcase that is just all X-Men trades. Literally top to bottom.
I'm so glad
X-Men
you finally got a bookshelf for it, because it was just a very large pile for a long time.
Yeah, well, it was a couple piles underneath the side table of my bed that were just next to each other.
There was a side table on your bed,
like my nightstand, and underneath that were just piles of X-Men trades.
No, I know they were also piled on top. I don't think you could find a bedside table in there.
It was. I mean, yeah, it was a little more unhinged, I'll say, than having a bookshelf that is only X-Men trade paperbacks.
And so, how far did you get before you said, let's start over and make a podcast about this?
I am currently, and I haven't stopped, right? Like I'm still trudging forward. I'm currently in 1988, the Inferno era.
Okay.
Because things start branching out, right? Like I decided I would also tackle all the ancillary stuff. So stuff that is very heavily tied into the X-Men, but isn't exactly X-Men, like Dazzler. I read all of Dazzler.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest doing that. I have been reading.
Sorry, will we be doing that?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to talk about that when we get to that era. I think no. But I read all of that. I've been reading all of. I'm about halfway through all of Power Pack.
Oh no.
Just because Louise Simonson wrote Power Pack for the first 25 issues, so it ties into the X-Men just over and over and over again. So even though they're not mutants, they really shouldn't be part of the X-Men world. They kind of are. And it gives deeper context. Same with Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger tie into the X-Men a lot. There was a period of time where they were thought to be mutants. Way later in the 2000s, like mid-2000s, they become members of the X-Men. So I've been reading all of Cloak and Dagger, which is morally very strange.
Is that something we want to dig into right now?
Yeah, probably let's avoid that for now. But yeah, so anyway, so as it's been branching out, I think, and like this is also the Inferno era is also where you get Excalibur, and X Factor's been going for about 50 issues, and New Mutants has been going for about 70 issues at that point. Wolverine starts around that time,
And they're
so
intertwined, right?
yeah. Well, except for Excalibur is pretty much self-contained, and same with Wolverine at this era. But Wolverine is, I think, pretty soon is going to be very, very tied into, like in the 90s, Wolverine is super tied into the X-Men.
Yeah, sure.
So
He joins the team.
so at the moment when he
Rookie.
I think that if you were doing what I'm doing, and I wouldn't suggest anyone do what I'm doing, but we are doing a podcast where we do exactly this.
Thanks.
If you're doing what I'm doing, I would say like Wolverine and Excalibur, you could treat as breaks from the main X-Men continuity. You could just be like, all right, I'm going to read the first 30 issues of Wolverine in a row without reading any other books in between. That was like so much more explanation than you needed.
That's fine. I will say, I don't think that it fully covers your depth of obsession with the X-Men. So,
I have dated somebody that described the X-Men as my religion, right? Like I've been a non-religious man since I was like 14 or whatever. And at some point, I think what she realized and then what I realized is it's not that I believe in the X-Men, but also a lot of people didn't believe in the Greek gods. It was more like a series of totems for ideas that you could call upon when you needed to feel those emotions, right? Like, oh, I need strength. I'm going to think a lot about Hercules right now. I need
to get
a
out of
Cajun
here.
accent. I'm going to need a Cajun accent. I need to think a lot about Gambit right now.
I need to be cool as hell. Let me think about Gambit.
I need to dive very rapidly back and forth between a little girl and a sexy adult. I'm going to think about Pixie.
Let's cut that part.
So that is a thing. That is a thing that happens. There's a lot of things that happen in X-Men that are problematic, like the sexualization of Pixie, right? Like super problematic things. Like Sunspot goes from a black kid to a white man throughout the series of New Mutants, right? Like different creators have different ideas about who these characters are, and sometimes that gets really weird and gross and frustrating. And I think we will be talking about that stuff as we get through, but it's going to be fucking years till we get to either of those characters.
Yeah. Great, guys. I can't wait. There's plenty of problematic stuff in the first 6.
That's why I'm bringing it up, right? Because there is this other idea of the mutant metaphor, and we'll be talking about that, I think, in this episode. And it's this idea of the difference between Xavier and Magneto. The metaphor at the time was like, oh, the mutants represent civil rights, and Professor Xavier represents the
Martin Luther King side, and Magneto represents the Malcolm X side.
Which is a horrible metaphor, especially when you actually read the comics. It's so wildly inaccurate and very much demonizes, the Black Power movement, and very much undersells the message of Dr. King, right?
Well, they create a militarized force.
Right. Well, and in addition to that, the X-Men run into some systemic oppression, like some major systemic oppression, but there's still 5 rich kids at a private school in upstate New York wanting for nothing. One of them is a millionaire.
Yeah.
And most of the time they can walk around without anybody knowing they're mutants. These were not luxuries that Black Americans had in the civil rights movement, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. We are going to cover the way I think that it relates to the gay rights movement, trans movement. There's a lot of, I think, over time, a lot of different struggles that they try to map the X-Men onto, and it is not always done tastefully.
I mean, absolutely. And I think, like, obviously, we're not going to obsess about this stuff nonstop. Like, I want to talk about what's fucking ridiculous and funny and adventurous and cool about the X-Men. But there's this idea also of, like, these people, even the addition of superpowers really complicates the oppression narrative in these books. And I get the idea of wanting to make outcasts or minorities feel like, oh, I'm special. There's something special and unique about me, the way there is something special and unique about Maggot and the worst X-Men. No, the way there's something special and unique about Cyclops or Wolverine or Jean Grey, right? But the truth is, if you were oppressing Wolverine, he could stab you with his claws, right? If you were performing police brutality on Jean Grey, she could levitate you on top of a building. But that is not something that was happening in that. People in the Stonewall riots couldn't have just used their optic blasts.
Yeah.
What we thought, we had long meetings about this. We said, let's start this podcast on a huge downer.
Yeah, let's talk about historic oppression. Up next on the list is genocide. There's plenty of...
Okay, so let's talk about Genosha, which is coming up. Another very poorly handled metaphor, but very cool X-Men story. That's the fucking thing, dude. Some of this stuff is handled so poorly, but the stories are so cool.
Yeah.
If you just take them as fiction, that you can't help but have conflicted feelings about the X-Men. I guess what I wanted to establish here is that we are not going to shy away from those conflicted feelings. We're going to make jokes and we're going to have fun, but we're also going to talk about how some of this stuff is pretty fucked up.
Can't wait.
Pat, what else do you have to say about the X-Men? Because I'm supposed to sum up the first issue, and I just talked a fucking lot.
I think that the X-Men are a lot of fun. I think we're going to go through... it makes me a little anxious that after, I think, about a year of you trying to read every X-Men comic, you've only gotten through 1988. But maybe you're not reading 6 issues a week. Hopefully...
Dude, 2 years, but 2 years is actually the truth.
Okay, that's a little more depressing, because the X-Men that I know and love comes much later. It's within the last 30 to 35 years. But that's great. We'll explore it. I know there's a lot that I'm missing. Let's get started.
Okay. All right. Hell yeah. So, issue number 1 of the X-Men.
Let's set the scene here. It is December 1963.
Ooh. What this month in history, December 1963.
Is it December?
What's happening? Just guessed. I assumed you knew what you were talking about.
No.
September.
1963.
Singer Cliff Richard was
about
the first British rock group to perform in Israel. That doesn't sound very interesting.
All right, let's go to the next fact.
CBS expands CBS News program anchored by Walter Cronkite.
Nope.
Why does that sound so weird to my ears? Walter Cronkite.
Because you're saying it wrong.
That's what it's written here. Okay, yeah. What's his actual name?
Try to keep that in mind as we go through issue 1 here.
What? Walter Cronkite. It's just spelled wrong. The movie Tom Jones appears. Rolling Stones has their first tour. The Judy Garland show premieres. Those are some big events.
Okay. So we're up against the Judy Garland show.
So imagine you're a little boy, 1963, or a little girl, just a little person, 1963.
Long day at the factory.
Curled up in front of your giant TV with its tiny little screen. Judy Garland show is on. Your parents are complaining about the Rolling Stones, the Rolling Stones' hips, and you're laying there on your probably paisley couch, and you're reading X-Men #1, written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby. You might even know those guys from the Fantastic Four. And this is also this same month is when the Avengers comic came out.
Ooh,
so
big month.
Some other interesting context. Okay, so quickly, what happens in this first issue is that we are introduced to the original four: Cyclops, Iceman, Angel, and Beast. When Professor X mentally calls them into his classroom, they all go through some training exercises and get a little feisty with each other. Then he introduces them to their newest member, Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl. It seems right after this happens, the evil mutant villain Magneto, master of magnetism, he shows up in Cape Citadel, Florida, a military base, and he starts hijacking missiles. And he says he's basically trying to take over the military base. The military has no defenses against this guy. They're launching missiles, and he's just shrugging them off with his magnetic powers. He's shooting guys up in the air with magnetic force fields. He's wrapping them up in magnetic
Blankets.
And he takes over Cape Citadel. Then all the X-Men show up. They demonstrate their powers mostly by moving soldiers out of the way to get to Magneto. And then in like 3 pages maybe, they defeat the evil mutant Magneto and get congratulated by the army, and they head home. That's issue 1.
Issue 1, meet the X-Men.
So there's a lot of weird shit here. First of all, this is before Beast was smart.
Yes. Yeah, he is a regular schmuck. He's kind of a jerk.
And everybody is horny for Jean Grey. Like, well, almost everybody.
Yes.
Iceman, interestingly enough, is completely uninterested.
He is, so I will say, he seems more upset by the behavior of his fellow teen boys. He doesn't appreciate that they are all very openly lusting after Jean Grey after seeing her for about 2 minutes.
And Pat, neither am I. Neither am I happy about the fact that they're lusting after Jean Grey so openly.
Yeah. They're coming on a little strong, a little handsy.
Yeah.
They're all very well dressed.
What do you think about Professor X's character here?
Is this his first time working with teen boys, I guess is the question, because he did not seem to expect that they would show interest in her as anything other than a pupil.
Right. Also, he doesn't seem he spends most of the issue just yelling at them for roughhousing or doing their trainings wrong. And he's putting them through like legit death traps. At one point, he sends Angel through a spinning series of blades, and then Beast throws a literal bowling ball at Iceman.
At his head. He tries to kill him.
And he succeeds, and Iceman dies, and that's why Iceman isn't an X-Man anymore. That part is not true.
That part got cut.
It's also interesting. He introduces Jean Grey not as a mutant, but just as a beautiful girl. An attractive young lady, which it sucks.
I mean, so you imagine the reason to do that is to try to set us, the reader, up for some surprise here when she displays a mutant power. But yeah, it is very Marvel method to just for Stan Lee to see a teen girl and say, look, here's an attractive young lady. as a way to hide any other secrets.
I think it's worth saying this is not Stan and Jack at their best.
No, not quite.
No, this is awkward writing from Stan Lee. This is pretty clumsy artwork from Jack Kirby. It might look that we'll get to this later in the episode, but I have a feeling it might be due to the inker. Paul Reinman inks this, and when the inker changes on this book, Jack Kirby's artwork just
pops.
Exactly. And it doesn't in this. It looks a little muddy and a little awkward in this.
That's
issue.
true. Although character design wise, as we get into some of the other issues, I do think that there's some Jack Kirby focusing his efforts elsewhere. And it is, you're right, it's the same month that the first issue of the Avengers released. It is towards the end of Kirby's time or first run with Marvel. Like, he's just kind of pumping things out here. Stan Lee's also pretty overextended.
He does. At this point, he does design Magneto's. What do you think about Magneto's costume? Like the X-Men costumes, whatever. It's their early costumes. It's just the yellow and always hard to tell in early Marvel comics. Is it yellow and blue or yellow and black? We don't know. But Iceman's uniform is just booties, and his body's made of clumpy snow.
Yeah, Iceman is. He looks like he's got a crust growing on him. He's
right. If they colored him differently, he'd be Scab Man.
Yeah.
But Magneto. Okay, try and separate yourself from the decades of Magneto's costume and think, if you saw this for the first time, what do you think about Magneto?
It's intimidating. He's got rivets, which I know Jack Kirby is a big fan of, but it really, it gives that armor or his suit like an armored appearance. He's got the helmet. He's got huge horns on the helmet on the front piece, and he's got crazy eyes. Every time you see
right.
him, he's got like this dead stare. Sometimes he's even just looking out into space. He's got crazy eyes.
He's also pretty wild in this. Like he's pretty. What would you describe megalomaniacal in this issue?
Yes, he doesn't really have a stated purpose other than to rule the world. I think is the only indication that we get.
He makes some claims about like, with these missiles here, the world isn't safe for mutants.
Big time for missiles. Big decade for missiles.
And I also want to say I think we're about ready to move on to the next issue, but I think there's some other things that we should address given that this is the first issue. And number one, there is some Twilight Zone style radioactive panic here.
Sure.
It's clearly stated that one of the reasons Professor X became a mutant is because his parents worked in a nuclear facility.
Oh, yeah.
So the implication is that mutants were created because, like, they began to exist because of the existence of nuclear radiation. And obviously, Magneto's first act is to try and take over a missile base. And there's something kind of interesting about that, I think.
Yeah, very of the time. I wonder, I know all the historic events that are about to take place that the X-Men haven't seen yet, but
they seem completely unaware that tragedy is about to happen in the world. When Iceman gets told that they're going to a military base to defeat an evil mutant who's stolen a bunch of missiles, what he yells to everybody is the word YAYBO.
YAYBO. Get that on a soundboard.
Iceman yelling YAYBO is one of the highlights of this issue. Do you have any other highlights of the issue?
This one also involves Iceman. Actually, there is in the fight between Magneto and the mutants, it's really, most of it is just them describing their powers as they use them to fly around the room. But at one point, Magneto is sending, I guess, is picking up a container of rocket fuel. I know it's rocket fuel because right on the front of the container is written rocket fuel. It's on fire and it is flying through the air at Iceman, who says, "Oh boy, here comes trouble."
Like what you'd say to a toddler who's walking into
Yes.
a room with their family. Oh boy, here comes trouble. Before we move on to issue 2, I think let's also what I think we fucked up here. We failed to do is just introduce the X-Men. So there's Cyclops at this moment. He's called Slim Summers.
Slim Summers.
He's got eye beams, red eye beams come out of his face. They're force, not heat. You got Beast, Hank McCoy. Again, if you know a little bit about him, he eventually becomes super smart. He's not smart in this one. He's just kind of like a bargain basement, the Thing.
He's not. He wears a smoking jacket though,
which everyone knows.
It's pretty classy. He wears a smoking jacket, cufflinks. There's one frame where I'm pretty sure he's holding a pipe, and they had to remove the pipe, or maybe
because they're like,
Kirby was just using someone that holds a pipe as a reference.
Jack, this is supposed to be a kid. We gotta erase this pipe. So there's his power basically is big hands and feet, and he is kind of strong and pretty dexterous. Then there's Iceman, who is kind of just like a snowman. He at this point he's more like Snowman
At one
than
point,
Iceman.
he puts buttons in his eyes and a carrot on his nose to prank the rest of the X-Men and pretend to just be an indoor snowman.
There's a horrifying... If you don't read close enough, there's a horrifying moment where it looks like he's just got a gaping maw into his body where his mouth, the mouth of the snowman should be. But if you look closely in the previous panel, he's got like this fruit peels or something that he uses. Then you've got Warren Worthington the third. He's the third, so you know that he's rich, and he is the Angel, and he's got big wings. The End, and then the fifth, the newest member is Jean Grey, Marvel Girl. She's
the teleporter.
She can move things with her mind, which in this issue is called teleportation.
Which I don't want to get into it, but if you break down the word to its entomology, which one's the one that's studying
etymology?
Bugs? Etymology. It could work. You could consider this to be teleportation rather than telekinesis.
And was this before Star Trek, when teleportation really became like a major thing in culture?
Yes, I think Star Trek was late 60s, and they called it beaming.
right. And then Professor X has just like unspecified mental powers. He can detect mutants. He can talk to people in their brains. We don't know what else he can do. And let's move on to issue 2, Pat.
Yes,
what happened?
Issue 2, known as Meet the Vanisher.
No one can stop the Vanisher.
No one can stop the Vanisher is a fun little piece. It starts off much like the first one does, where the X-Men are just kind of being themselves. In this case, it seems like they're hopping through New York City, using their powers to transit back to the mansion, maybe after their last adventure, maybe just...
We'll get into it. I want to talk about this later.
They're traveling through the city. They're showing off their powers. The professor gathers them at the mansion to talk about a new mutant that he's sensed called the Vanisher. We cut to the Vanisher. He is committing crimes very boldly. He's just announcing the crimes he's going to commit and then committing them. We find out that he is actually a teleporter. He is able to, in the true sense of the word, teleport himself, vanish from one space and appear in another space. It proves very difficult for them to take down. They can't quite seem to figure out what his power is, so they just keep trying to attack him. He keeps vanishing. Professor Charles Xavier recognizes how dire the situation is and says, I need to step in personally, help my students here, and show them how you defeat a villain. Professor Xavier shows up. He puts the Vanisher into a sort of mind lock, which is a brand new reveal. We did not know that he can do this. We only knew that he could talk to people, talk at people through their brains. He comes in, he blocks off the Vanisher's power. The Vanisher has sort of an existential crisis. He becomes upset about it. He says, who am I even if I can't vanish? And he gives himself up immediately, which causes all the gangsters that he's hired to turn on him. The X-Men fight the gangsters. So our teens still get some action in there. That's issue 2.
Yeah, that beginning that you're talking about is wild because it is like they're just like Professor Xavier's just like, get home now, and we don't know where they're coming from. We know that Beast gets home by jumping on a train that he calls the New Haven commuter special to Westchester. The last time we saw them, they were in Florida.
So I think they're in New York. I assume that this is a train that goes to Connecticut and would have a stop in Westchester, New York, which is,
right.
I'm pretty sure, just north of New York City.
But the obstacle that Angel and Marvel Girl have to overcome to get home is just because, and this must have been, they were like, oh, we have to have obstacles for everybody. So how do we come up with one for Angel and Marvel Girl when Angel can just fly them home? So it's Angel gets mobbed by a gang of girls.
Yes.
who
he's
want to kiss him.
And yeah, they want to kiss him so bad.
And Marvel Girl picks all of them up and drops them into a movie theater playing a movie called A Teenager's Tears.
A Teenager's Tears. Matt, do you have any reference for A Teenager's Tears?
I've never heard of A Teenager's Tears. I'm pretty sure there's no movie called A Teenager's Tears.
I Googled it. There is a book called A Teenager's Tears. It doesn't have the hyphen like this one does. Back then they were teen-agers. Teenager's Tears is a story about a Mormon family who decides to open their relationship and the impact that it has on the children in that family.
Its subtitle is When Parents Convert to Polygamy.
Yeah. It was written in 2001, so it's possible this isn't this book isn't the movie that the X-Men are referencing here.
It's possible, but it probably is, though. They're referencing this book. Like, I bet this book was in production for a long time.
Wouldn't it be funny if it was somebody that worked at the movie theater and got his heart broken, and so he just, instead of putting the actual movie title up, just put A Teenager's Tears to be like angsty?
You come into the movie theater and he's blocked off.
He's just crying.
He's blocked off the actual theater, and he's like, "No, watch me cry."
A Teenager's Tears.
So then, Cyclops and Iceman, they have to save some construction workers, but they get home by hitching a ride in an ice cream truck.
Yes, and Iceman eats 3 or 4 popsicles on the way.
This is starting the running gag that Iceman loves ice cream, which, first draft thought, Stan.
Must have killed in the early 60s.
I feel like you could have ran that one by the writer's room and been like, is there anything more clever that we could think of? Like, what if you really liked hot coffee? Maybe that would have been just slightly more interesting.
That's really good.
Thank you. Hey, Marvel, I'm open to hire. Tell us about this fucking Vanisher's fucking schemes are insane.
Oh my god, so he's so bold. First of all, he wears a full bodysuit that appears to have some sort of scale on it, and the headpiece is a hood that
kind of
rises up behind his head but doesn't cover his bald head in any way. It's sort of like the top of a cape.
Imagine if you were wearing a hoodie and stuffed a pillow into the hood part. And then
so you couldn't fit your head into it, but it still stood straight up.
You glued that pillow to the back of your head, your bald ass head.
And it does come like you. I'll give you credit for mentioning this, Matt, but it comes off as that internet trend where people were putting a cat's face through a piece of bread, and you just saw their face and then bread blooming out from it. He looks like an ugly little flower.
It really, really does look like that, and
so,
definitely, is this the worst Jack Kirby design ever?
No.
Okay.
The Eternals exist.
Okay, you're right. So yeah, Vanisher. Oh yeah, so his plan is to fucking just walk up to the cops and say, "Hey, I want to rob that bank. Take
He's
me into
bold,
that
man.
bank and give me money." And the cops are like, "All right, we'll do it."
The
And they
cops.
escort him into the bank, give him the fucking money, and they're like, "Now what? Smart guy?"
Hang on. Let me take you back a step, Matt, because the
Yeah.
cops. I'm pretty sure this isn't true, but the Vanisher walks up to the police and says, I need to rob this bank. You need to escort me into the bank to rob it so nobody tries to stop me. And the police, a la Airbuds, say, well, there's not a law that prevents us from stopping you from robbing the bank. There's nothing illegal about saying you intend to rob a bank. So we'll take you, you idiot, because as soon as you actually rob the bank, then we can arrest you, and you just asked us to come with you.
Okay, imagine being in court, right? The Vanisher's trial, and they're like, "You robbed this bank. You're arrested for bank robbery." And the attorney says, "Okay, tell us exactly what happened." Okay, we walked him into the bank. Okay, then what next? Oh, we gave him all the money. And then what? And then he tried to walk away.
Can't do that.
Oh, okay. So you're saying he robbed the bank, but you escorted him in, and gave him the money. I don't think that fits the definition of robbing. He wasn't even holding a weapon. Oh, he was. I'm wrong. I take it all back. He is holding a weapon, but he doesn't take it out
Which
until
is
he's well into the bank.
a constitutionally protected right.
Yeah, you might have a concealed carry license.
Yeah, you're allowed to have a ray gun if you are licensed for it.
And it's the same thing. It's similarly bizarre that his next thing he announces he's going to steal the U.S.'s defense plans, whatever that means. And the U.S.'s defense plans are sitting in a briefcase on a table surrounded by 4 men with Tommy guns.
He teleports into the defense planning room where they keep this briefcase and says, I'll be back in a few days. I'm going to steal that. And then they don't move the briefcase.
About it.
They leave it in the same place, and they add 4 men with guns.
Hey, Pat, I have an idea. What if we put handcuffs on the briefcase and lock it to the floor? The end! A teleporter can't do shit about that.
Once again, that's good. Marvel or the Pentagon, if you're hiring, that's got some ideas.
I don't want to work for the Pentagon. If the Pentagon, if you're listening, this is entrapment. You have to tell us. The other thing about this is we are seeing Stan Lee suddenly. I think this is where Stan Lee got the idea for the Beast. The Beast's training montage is like 3 pages long. So he has Beast comment on it by saying, "Oh, you gave me the toughest one because I'm the smartest." And it comes off as a quip, like a joke. Like, obviously he's not the smartest. But you get the sense that Stan Lee, writing like 7 comic books at this time, was like, what was it about this Beast guy? Let me flip through. I said, he's the smartest. Okay. And then from then on, Beast is a super genius.
Yeah. Next issue, he is doing calculus with his feet. He is...
Tell me about this next issue, Pat.
Yeah. So issue number 3, Beware of the Blob. Really...
Okay, I will.
Questionably moral stuff. I absolutely love this... that this is their 3rd action as the team of X-Men. This one starts off like all the others. We are getting to know the X-Men. We see their training regimen. They're shooting big duffel bags full of sawdust at Beast, who is allergic to sawdust. I love that we're getting to know the X-Men. And they're generally having a good time roughhousing until Professor X summons them. He's got an urgent matter. He has sensed a mutant in the city of New York, and the X-Men need to go and find him and recruit him to join the X-Men. They do exactly that. They go to New York. They start looking for freaks. They find a few false flags, and then finally come across the Blob, who cannot be moved and can even deflect bullets with his skin. They get a little rough with him. They force him to come back to the mansion. He doesn't want to join the X-Men, but they tell him that he can't leave because he knows too much. He takes it as a threat, gathers a posse, tries to attack the X-Men. It's actually pretty successful. They mount a good comeback when Professor X builds a gadget that can erase the minds of the Blob and his posse, and then the Blob just goes back to his life, having forgotten the entire experience. We reset back to page 1.
This is so... Okay, we have 3 issues to get to, so we can't talk about everything here, but this fucking issue is so wild. Like, first, I sense a mutant nearby. We have to find them, and they just run around and act like complete more... Like, okay, there's... The first person that they think is a mutant is... Beast sees a guy he thinks is just floating in midair. He's standing on a big glass cube to put up advertising sign, like an advertisement on a building. First of all, like, I don't think that's how that happens. I don't think you put up signs on a building by standing on a giant glass cube. I don't think you do that.
They might have written themselves into a corner with that one.
And then Cyclops is like, oh, this person is firing at targets behind his back. Maybe he's got a extra eye power. And then it's just somebody's scamming
It's just
somebody else.
Ridiculous carnival game. Basically, if you were like, if you saw the guy that did 3-card Monty and you were like, he's doing magic.
And then they see the Blob, and it's just a big fat guy who's so big that nobody can move him. And Cyclops is like, this guy must be the mutant. And that is before he sees people shoot bullets at him. If they had just waited 3 panels later, it wouldn't be problematic. But all it is Cyclops sees a fat guy and is like, why can't I push this guy over? He must be a mutant.
And then, of course, he has to prove to himself that he can push this guy over. He as soon as he meets the Blob, he is like, I do not like this guy's attitude. And then as soon as Jean enters the picture, Cyclops lifts up his glasses and blasts him.
And he says, it's time you learn some manners, Tubby. Like, come on,
man.
Scott.
Slim. Very different time. The 60s, you could make a lot of money off of making fun of fat people. So that's what Stan Lee's doing here.
Right. So, yeah. So Cyclops, blasts Blob into a fucking furnace. Has no idea that a furnace wouldn't burn the Blob. So almost just like lights an innocent dude on fire.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they force him to come back to the mansion. Well, no, he eventually agrees to because he thinks Jean Grey is pretty.
But I want to be clear that I'm not exaggerating or like ironically interpreting the way they go about this. They demand that he come to the mansion. He does eventually agree because he is immovable, but he sees that they have a girl, which girls were all the rage in the 60s. I don't know if you knew this.
Yeah, people liked girls. We've seen two of these 3 issues. We learned that people like girls.
It's crazy. Pre-JFK assassination.
Well, hold on. They like one girl. They hated that gang of girls who wanted to kiss Angel.
Well, Angel didn't. They force him to come back, and then at the mansion, he just gives him a simple rejection. He says, no thanks. I don't want to join your... See, I've got a great job at the carnival. I don't want to join your little military unit here.
And they're like, okay, we didn't expect this. Like, literally say, like, we didn't expect this to happen. We gotta wipe your mind. And he's like, what? No, fuck off. And so they attack him with physical force.
Professor X says, stop him. Don't let him leave. It is...
Also, Pat, you said this is pre-JFK assassination. I just want to point out,
I know.
This is the very first issue of the X-Men in a JFK-less world.
Oh, so it was probably written pre-JFK assassination.
Maybe.
They were
Maybe.
pumping them out pretty fast back then.
Yeah. So when you say Blob gathers a posse, it is literally just all of the circus people. So the X-Men
Yeah,
get
the
attacked
carnival
by
freak
like
show.
a giraffe, a bunch of men doing a human pyramid. Somehow that was supposed to stop the X-Men. A
Somehow
literal gorilla.
Yes, the Beast fights a gorilla, wins, and then loses to a human pyramid.
They fight a gorilla and they fight a giraffe. This is not cool. Also, there's another scene where Iceman is eating ice cream. I just want that on record. And this is also where
here's my theory.
Okay.
I've thought this through. If I had Iceman's power, I would walk around with a little pouch of milk and some sugar, maybe an egg yolk, so that on command I could make ice cream. I could just freeze it up, stir it up. I imagine he's got some sort of blending power in there. And make ice cream. In the last episode, we saw him stealing someone else's ice cream. In the last issue. In this issue, we see him. We don't know that he made his own, but
no, but we
implication.
don't see. Yeah, he's not near a kitchen. He's just in a room, secretly eating ice cream.
That's right. He's supposed to be studying.
But instead, he's spending all this time eating it. That's what they say about kids in the 1960s. They're supposed to be studying, but they spend all their time eating ice cream.
Damn ice cream. And now today's parents want their kids to have ice cream instead of screens, right?
Yeah. Spend your time eating ice cream instead of watching your TikToks about ice cream. That's what the kids watch. They watch TikToks of people eating ice cream.
Let's go, bub.
So... yeah, so they wipe Blob's mind and they capture all the other literally this is how they solve it. They capture all the other circus people in a big blanket and the issue's over.
And they make a gadget. Professor X.
Oh yeah, because in this point of X-Men history, everybody is a super inventor. They can just invent shit within an hour.
It's kind of everyone in Marvel history at this point in time is a super inventor.
Yeah, like the technologies that have never been dreamed of. People just invent in an hour. Issue number 4, The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. This is the return of the dreaded Magneto. So we start, X-Men are training in the Danger Room again. And then we cut to a scene of a bunch of new mutants that we've never met before. There is the creepy little sack of shit named Toad. There is a man wearing all green who moves really fast. His name's Quicksilver, and he seems to have an unhealthy obsession with his sister, who's named the Scarlet Witch, who also looks like a cat with its face stuck in bread, only red bread. And she can make unlucky things happen, we learn. And then there's Mastermind, who can create illusions. And he is a big, ugly. Imagine if John Waters was really ugly.
Yes.
And then they are all the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, they call themselves, and they are led by Magneto. They are in the middle of an operation to steal like a freighter from the Navy. Not exactly sure why, but Angel just happens to be flying over the ocean as Magneto is stealing this boat, and he goes back home and he's like, I saw a boat. And Professor Xavier's like, I wasn't aware of any boats. And so they know something's up. So they go out to the ocean where they find that Magneto has used this boat to take over a small nation. The nation is called Santa Marco, which becomes a part of Marvel history. Not a big part, but anyway. We also learn that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are there because Magneto saved Scarlet Witch from, a nondescript Eastern European mob who was trying to stab her with a pitchfork and burn her. And they don't like being there. We also learn Magneto has mental powers, and we get Magneto and Xavier fighting on like the astral plane, which is interesting. So anyway, Magneto takes over a small nation. The X-Men infiltrate it. Meantime, they infiltrate it. They infiltrate Magneto's new castle. They get beat up by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. It's hard to tell why Magneto decides he lost here, but he decides he lost. And he leaves two things behind him. He leaves, number one, a bomb to kill the X-Men when they enter his like throne room or whatever. And he leaves a nuclear bomb to destroy all of Santo Marco when he flees the country. Quicksilver doesn't like this, so he runs back into the room and disables the nuclear bomb before Magneto and his buddies flee. And Professor Xavier, at the last minute, discovers, again, with his mental powers, which I don't know how these fucking things work, because he uses his mental powers to sense a bomb and throws himself in front of the X-Men valiantly. And in the process, he is injured and loses his powers. I'm going to roll right into issue 5 because it is a cliffhanger.
Yeah, there's a to be continued.
Professor Xavier has now lost his powers, and in the next issue, it's trapped. One X-Man. We see the X-Men playing around with their powers as Jean's parents visit, and it causes some sitcom-y mishaps while trying to conceal the nature of the school. Cyclops accidentally gets caught in the danger room that's set to a beast training thing, and so he has to think on his feet to get out of it. In the meantime, Mastermind is looking for the X-Men and can't find them, and then we see him return to the new base of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which is Asteroid M, which is going to become a huge, even though it gets destroyed this issue, spoiler, it's going to become a huge part of X-Men and Marvel lore for fucking 50 years. Because they can't find the X-Men, they want to lure them out of hiding, so they send Toad down to, or back to Earth, because remember, they're in an asteroid floating around the Earth at this point. They send Toad down to Earth to wear a mask that makes him look less ugly and pretend to be a track and field star, and he uses his jumping powers to win a bunch of races. And the X-Men see it on TV, and they're like, that must be a mutant. They show up, they realize it's Toad, they fight the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and Magneto, who appear to save Toad, and they get away on a weird spaceship. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants do, up to Asteroid M. Somehow, we off-panel kidnapping the Angel. That's the one X-Man who is trapped. The X-Men, at the same time, kidnap Toad, and they use him to get up to Asteroid M, where they fight the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants again, and again win in a way that isn't entirely clear. It's just like, oh, they're winning the fight, so we gotta get out of here. Magneto and the Brotherhood escape in an airlocked escape pod. The Asteroid M explodes. The X-Men escape in an ice tube and get back down to Earth, where they find out Professor X was never actually injured. He was faking it, and they've passed the test.
Woo!
Holy shit. A lot to talk about here, pal. What do you think?
Very proud of the X-Men for having passed the test. Do you think...
What is the test? There's no way he could have predicted all that.
Professor Xavier is... Okay, he throws himself in front of a bomb. He is probably concussed. He wakes up. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's when he was like, it's actually a great opportunity to test my students in a life-threatening situation? Because that's a concussion thought.
Right. So this was not planned. This was just, I'm not thinking clearly.
Yeah. What an opportune time to take a break.
I think that is very probable. But it also, Professor Xavier is just a crazily manipulative dude anyway. We saw what he did to Blob. We neglected to mention in that issue 3, he professes to have, he's in love with Jean Grey, who's a child.
God, yeah.
And his ward, then he does this shit. He's just a manipulative weirdo at this point. He loves yelling at kids and falling in love with kids and wiping people's memories and attacking other mutants for no reason and lying to his students.
Can I say
Yeah.
They've clearly learned nothing here, right? When they see from issue 3, Beware of the Blob, the next time they see a person who could be a mutant, they're like, all right, time to employ these same practices.
And I want to say, this is after they've met a bunch of evil mutants, because that was issue 5. In issue 4, Magneto, and we have to talk about this, he takes over a small nation in the craziest way possible. I also want to mention, there is a scene where Cyclops cuts a cake with his eye beams.
Ooh, gross.
That cannot be sanitary.
I don't want to spoil future X-Men too much, but it's determined that he has a portal in his eyes to another dimension, right? A dimension where this energy is just abundant.
And forth. Yeah. Sometimes that's the explanation, other times it's not, but yeah.
Because that explanation is not sanitary to me. I don't know what the other ones are.
Because you have regular eyes, and now you have a dimension of force. You don't know what's in that dimension.
Yeah. And this is the stuff that's just bouncing around. It could bounce off the floor of a 7-Eleven in that dimension and then come out his eyes.
No matter what, whatever eye crusts and eyelashes and tears that might be in his eye sockets have just been forcibly pushed into the cake.
Cyclops, don't do this again.
Don't do it again, please. Never do this again. What thing we find out about this Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is they are always fighting with each other. They are always using their powers on each other, tricking each other, hurting each other. They fucking hate each other.
You know who I fucking hate is the Mind Master, the Mastermind.
Okay, why do you hate him?
I think it's the way that he's drawn, first of all, is just like, you're meant to hate this guy. He's got this long face with these sleepy eyes and that creepy John Waters pencil mustache. No disrespect to John Waters at all, but this guy just looks annoying. Like he's somebody that I would avoid a conversation with. And then he's arguing over the pettiest shit with everyone else.
And he will turn out to be one of the creepiest, worst enemies in X-Men history. In fact, in some ways, he is responsible for the death of millions of beings and almost the destruction of the Earth. We'll get into it in the Claremont years. Mastermind becomes...
I told you he sucks.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
Why does Professor X know where every ship is at all times?
Okay, he's got connections.
You mean FBI agent Fred Duncan?
Yes. Yeah. So it's conceivable that he's, as a wealthy man, got some ins with the government where maybe he is made aware of military training schedules. That's what he's concerned about. This is a military ship. It's also, again, sort of the time. There's a lot of news about large freighters that carry weapons. I think this is supposed to be like a big event. Oh, we don't know why this freighter is here, so it could be a threat.
Why was Angel there?
He says he was flying around. He was on a test flight.
Okay, so
we get another
what?
Sorry, in that very specific scene where Angel flies by, we get another really good Magneto crazy eyes shot where he's looking out the porthole of the boat. They both miss each other. Angel says, "Oh, a boat, interesting," and Magneto says, "Oh, a seagull, interesting," and they just go their separate ways.
So, would you go back home and say, "Hey, I saw a boat," and then your teacher to be like, "What?
No."
Here's another thing. So it's our first time visiting the astral plane in this. What they call it, the mental plane, but it's like a ghost. Professor X and a ghost Magneto. Because again, in this, we find out Magneto has mental powers.
Oh, yeah.
What? I don't know. It seems to imply that any mutant who's powerful enough also has mental powers in addition to whatever power they already have. But it is a really cool Jack Kirby drawing where there's like a ghostly Magneto and a ghostly Professor X standing on the Earth with all these like glowing planets and stars in the background. Very, very Kirby chic, right?
Yeah. You can see him starting to care, starting to really like put some time into these pages. I think he starts to put things in the background.
Another wild thing is how the Brotherhood take over Santa Marco. They do it with Mastermind creating an illusion of soldiers, and the entire nation sees a bunch of soldiers that don't shoot anybody, that they can't touch, that don't interact with anything, and they go, "Oh, we better give our nation to this man."
And dress like they're military. It was a pretty quick turnaround from an illusionary military marching in Magneto uniforms and the actual military of Santa Marco adopting the Magneto uniforms.
And where did Magneto have all these made?
I don't know. What's the chief export of Santa Marco?
Purple military uniforms and armbands. Armbands with every letter on them. And so Magneto is just like, just wear the M ones.
Maybe he just made them erase the S on the SM armbands.
There's also a great scene here where Cyclops defeats two soldiers by using his eye beams to roll them stick and hoop style down a hallway.
They are so disrespectful to the military.
Yeah, I mean, every issue has the X-Men just like beating up a bunch of military guys to get to the evil mutants more than it has them fighting the evil mutants.
In a humiliating way, too. Like, they're leapfrogging them, they're picking them up and moving them with their minds. Stick and hoop rolling with laser eyes.
In this next issue, then Mastermind is just walking around New York looking for the X-Men.
Sorry, Matt, just to correct you, he has already walked around New York. He has walked around so much that he's now in the suburb of Westchester, New York, in front of the X-Mansion, and still is like, no damn sign of these X-Men. And it was as he's saying that, the X-Men are driving by behind him on their way to go find another mutant.
It's just like, is that Magneto's plan? Hey, go walk everywhere. Hey, we need to find the X-Men. Can you go walk everywhere?
Yeah, go wander.
Here's another question I have, Pat. I don't mean to keep leading this thing, but...
No. I love answering questions. I'm very smart.
How quickly can you go from a completely unknown person to a televised track and field star? Because Toad seems to do it in a day.
So, I see where you're going with this, but there is a panel of him clearing the pole vault without a pole. I think, let's say you're a local track coach, right? And you finally get to state or regionals or whatever this is, that it actually makes it to, this is a local track. These are not celebrity track runners, right?
Okay,
and so
right,
you're at the finals, the bright lights are shining down. A guy walks up to you and is like, hey, I can actually clear the pole vault. I don't even need a pole, and I'll do it with plenty of room. I promise I'll blow everybody away. The coach says yes. And then this guy is like, oh, by the way, I don't think I need to show you, but I can do this with hurdles too. I can do this probably just in like a 40-yard dash if you want.
Yeah.
And that's when he reveals that he's actually going to hop the 40-yard dash, not run it.
Huh.
You could get yourself on TV. I've thought this.
Yeah, but the most likely scenario, you walk up to the guy on ESPN or whatever, and you're like, hey, I can do something crazy. Most likely scenario is they're like, all right, we'll film you on live TV, and then you don't do it. Like, you just whip your dick out or something, right? Like, most likely scenario is you're lying, and you have some other motive.
That's true. I would say in 2025, they would be a lot more careful about who they let on television. Maybe.
Okay, well, yeah, what else is there to talk about in this two-parter in the end of this issue? There's just like a fight, right? And they destroy Asteroid M.
Yeah. So Asteroid M breaks apart. It's not clear why that happens, except that they're battling so intensely.
Mm-hmm.
I was disappointed by that. It was, okay, so first time X-Men go to space, very exciting. We see them get in a ship,
Yeah.
a bright red rocket ship. I don't know. I'm getting kind of sick of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I think that
Like already
two issues
two
back
issues
to back
and
is
it's
more
done.
than enough for
I'm
these guys.
so done with them. Yeah.
They are annoying, and they get away at the end. They're going to come back because they just disappear at the end.
They're just not the most compelling of comics. At this
They're not. They're
moment.
trying, but they are not yet interesting. Again, I'm sure if you're comparing this to comics at the time, this is novel. This is something different. But yeah, I struggled a bit.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we didn't really talk about was I think you were supposed to look at the X-Men and go, whoa, these guys are weird. Right? In a way that by now we have absorbed the idea of an Iceman or a man with wings or a person with a visor for a face. At the time, again, this was pre-Star Trek too. So you were supposed to look at the front of this comic and go, what is going on here? Who are these weirdos?
Yeah.
And
It's they're naturally born superheroes. It's sort of a this could happen to you story, which is very popular at the time, right? Spider-Man was doing it. So maybe we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. We have one more issue to cover here.
Because it's like the strangest superheroes of all. It says on the cover, right? Like you're supposed to be... Okay, anyway, yeah, one more issue. Let's hear it, Pat.
Okay, issue 6, the title of which is Submariner Joins the Evil Mutants. Is that the actual title, or is that just
That's
the
title.
Submariner
That's the
Joins
title. They weren't really good at it at the time.
So the X-Men are sitting around having breakfast and just theorizing a bit, and I believe it's Professor X who says, wait a second, could the Submariner be a mutant? And again, having learned nothing, says we must find him at once and ask him to join the X-Men. This time it's so that he does not join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Yeah.
Professor Xavier mentally projects himself under the sea and just starts wandering the ocean floor to find Namor the Submariner.
I'm really biting my tongue. This is so crazy. Okay.
Yeah, it turns out Magneto, number one, also can mentally project himself to the bottom of the sea, and number two is also wandering the bottom of the ocean floor in the same general area. Professor X says, I'm too late, gets out. Magneto approaches Namor, speaks to him a bit. Namor thinks it over and decides to join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He hates humanity just as much as the mutants do. They build a big magnet ray on this remote island that they're all hiding on now, and Namor is on board until the X-Men show up. They get into a fight, they kidnap Quicksilver, and as they're escaping with Quicksilver, Magneto says, now's my chance to blow up all the X-Men. Scarlet Witch says, no, please don't. My brother is among the X-Men. Magneto says, I'm going to do it anyway. And Namor says, I don't appreciate the way you talk to women. So, no, you're not. And destroys the thing. Upon saying that, Magneto says, you fool, and blasts him with the magnet ray. Namor is strong enough to blow up the magnet ray. And then says, humans, including mutants, are stupid. I'm going back to the sea.
Which is how every Namor issue ended in that era.
Yeah, generally he's a complicated guy.
There's a lot of fun stuff in this issue. I don't think this is overall that fun of a read, but there's a bunch of interesting moments. And the first one is the very beginning. First, from the beginning, Chick Stone takes over as inker, and the artwork just soars. It's night and day. You suddenly see just how good Kirby is. They've
all got very distinct hairstyles. They've got really like well-defined suits on the table the food on the table is even like, it looks delicious. The cabinets in the back have lattice work on them.
This is where we see your theory come to fruition, and Iceman makes ice cream.
Makes his own ice cream.
In front of us.
Make his own pie a la mode.
But it's just coming out of his fingers. So you're thinking that we're seeing the end of this process, a moment earlier, he was shaking up eggs, sugar, and milk in his hand.
Yes.
Or it's possible Jack Kirby and Stan Lee just didn't really think about how ice cream works.
It's canon at this point that he can make his own ice cream.
Iceman can make his. Yeah, all right. So what am I arguing about? You're right. Good point. You're right. Like, what am I trying to prove here? It's proven. One of his powers that
Right.
people forget about a lot is that Iceman can make ice cream.
It's not a separate power that he can make ice cream. He has learned how to use his existing power
to pull the
and a bag of milk
to pull the
to make
sugar, egg, and milk out of the very air molecules. Because, you know, we're all breathing traces of sugar, egg, and milk at all times. And he can pull it out.
You're being ridiculous. They're close enough to Canada that he can go and get those pouches of milk.
Okay.
And just keep them handy when he needs to. He can use his power to keep them cool so they don't spoil.
So
that's all I'll say on the matter.
There's this other... Okay, this idea that Professor X and Magneto at the very same time in very different locations think, oh, what about Namor? Right? Or was Magneto somehow listening in mentally on...
No, it's just they say, like, unfortunately, at the same time on a remote island, and they cut to Magneto thinking, oh, we should reach out to Namor.
And Magneto uses his mental powers, which apparently all mutants that are powerful enough have, and they both send their ghosts down to the sea. And just like you said, it's the exact same as Mastermind walking around all of New York looking for the X-Men. They have to walk around the entire ocean looking for Namor.
And they not only find him, they cross paths.
So a couple other things about this issue. Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, switches from the
hood to the mask.
The hood to the mask, yeah, and her hair is now visible. I guess somebody was like, hey, why have a girl if you can't see her beautiful hair? That's probably something that somebody in the Marvel bullpen said at the time. And another thing I want to bring up is there is this panel. Clearly, Jack Kirby has started to care about this comic because there's this panel where he draws this beautiful, like the ship cresting through waves. This big like sail barge cresting through waves, and in the foreground are all these seagulls, like just lovingly drawn. And then it seems to me as if somebody saw that panel and was like, there's no superheroes in this, Jack. And it's like, well, yeah, they're on the boat. You can just say they're on the boat. And they're like, nope, gotta be superheroes. So he draws a really shitty Angel just flying around, and for no reason. Because Angel says, still no sign of land from here, Professor. And Professor X says, return to the ship, Angel. And it's the only time, like, that's it. That is, yeah.
They're taking a sailboat. It's not a sailboat, like an old-fashioned sailing vessel, a large ship. This looks like if you took Angel out of the picture, it could hang on an old man's wall. It is just a beautiful picture of a boat. Clearly Jack Kirby just wanted to draw a boat with like a nice little ocean scene.
Between this issue and the 2000s, is there any connection between Namor being a mutant and like the X-Men?
I know
we're not trying to spoil things. Yeah, I am unaware of any. I wonder, hey, if anybody knows, and this is because I don't think we have much to talk about in this issue. So we can start moving towards the dismount. So if anybody knows of other Namor X-Men interactions, besides just like they exist in the same universe, actual things about Namor being a mutant between this and Matt Fraction's run, let us know. You can email us at mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. So do you have anything else to say about this issue? It's kind of besides those weird things at the beginning and the beautiful artwork, like it's kind of a boring issue.
Yeah, it's a little boring. There's a couple of, I think, like you said, single panels that throw some interesting things at you. Magneto isn't talking to Namor directly in his mentally projected form. He's talking to one of Magneto's servants and trying to, like, there's a good idea there where Magneto wants to ally with a servant of Namor to help trick him into getting Namor into the evil mutants. But it's like
Yeah.
3 panels long, and then
Right.
it goes right back into shooting laser beams. So there's a few wide shots of the X-Men where they're trying to squeeze as many people as possible in. And Iceman in the background, he looks like the Iceman we know and love. He's not the weird little crusty skin monster. He is just a human body formed of ice, like an ice sculpture of a man. And it's much more comforting.
Right. Like
He's,
maybe they're starting to think there's a more interesting way to do this guy.
or an easier way to draw him, honestly.
Maybe. Here's my last question for you about this
Yeah.
issue. Magneto's got magnet powers. Why did he have to build a giant magnet to destroy the boat?
What do they think magnets do? It's
I know!
it's a wooden boat.
The magnets just do anything they want them to do, I think. As they have no idea. You know, this problem wouldn't be articulated as well until the 2000s when the Insane Clown Posse made their brilliant theory about magnets that no one knows how they work. And I think Stan Lee was an early adopter.
Yeah, a big believer in you don't know what magnets do. Try to prove me wrong.
Yeah, no one knows how magnets work.
They're shooting this.
There's a cultural through line from the beginning of Marvel Comics all the way up through the Insane Clown Posse.
This is just step one of where we're going to start drawing parallels between the Insane Clown Posse and the X-Men. So buckle up.
Buckle up, everybody. So during this period of time, also, I do want to say, because we'll talk about the overall. During this period of time is when Daredevil first premiered.
Really?
Yeah, in 1964 is when Daredevil #1 came out.
Interesting. So this is truly, Matt, a golden age of comics.
I mean, technically, it's a silver age of comics. I just don't want you. I just don't want you to get hate online about this.
Okay, so we've got Daredevil, which is created by Stan Lee, right? But pretty quickly dropped by him. We've got the Avengers. We've got X-Men.
We've got Spider-Man. Spider-Man's been around for a while. He's been around for like 12 issues
established.
Or something.
And then
Fantastic Four have been around for about 3 years.
Doctor Strange. No.
Yeah, well,
it's
Strange Tales had been around for a while, and isn't that where Doctor Strange first appears? Let's look it up. It's Doctor Strange first appearance, Strange Tales 110. So July 1963. So you're right. Yeah. So this is where it all fucking happens.
So
Silver Surfer is one of the last people to join, and that's not till 1966, after the premiere of Star Trek.
Oh, interesting.
We're comparing to the premiere of Star Trek, apparently.
Yeah, I will say what I think separates this comic, because we're talking about an era where just like you pick your poison. And granted, a comic takes a short time to read. There's only so much for kids to do, so they're buying as many as they can, or trying to read as many as they can at least. What sets this one apart is how into just the lives of these teenagers this is. And I think that's what's really cool, not to get overly sincere here, but it's something that Spider-Man found success in and was kind of trying to balance. And it's something that the X-Men come out swinging with. The first, 3, 4, 5 pages of every issue is them just being teenagers, even in the to be continued, where we're promised that they will re-engage the evil mutants in the next issue. Next issue starts with them hanging out at home watching a track meet on TV. Like they're just there's so much time focused on them being regular folks, like just people that have to live their lives. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. What would you feel if you had to track like the overall arc of these first 6 issues? Like, what do you think is being said? Yeah.
I think this is really just meet the X-Men. Overall, the message is like, hey, here's a group of rowdy teens. They all have distinct personalities, and they'll get into some stuff. So yeah, there's a clear through line of these first 6 issues, I think, that break down to like issue 1 is meet the X-Men. This is the team. This is what they can do. Issue 2 is meet the people. They split them up immediately. They introduce you to each individual character and what makes them unique aside from their power set.
Right.
Issue 3 is mutants are a part of the world. There's a mutant just hanging out in New York somewhere. They're just they could be anywhere, they could be anyone.
Right.
Issue 4 and 5 is introducing the Rogues Gallery. It's where we meet the evil mutants. It's where we just find out that, yeah, there's not just one evil mutant. This is a choice that mutants have to make. And then number 6 is introducing that concept to the wider Marvel universe. Here's an established, popular character, one of our first. Let's see what happens when this new cast of characters meets him. I think that's really cool, the way that they're kind of building it as they go in these first 6 issues.
So do you think that's why they graduate in this issue? Is
Yes.
because it's like, okay, our intro is done. You now understand the X-Men, and that also means the X-Men understand themselves. We're ready for them to move on and expand rather than establish.
Right. It seems like this first chunk here was to say, hey, just so you know, these people are trained. Once they start getting into their crazy adventures, you should know, because you read the early issues, that they trained for this. They were ready. Yeah. Which I don't think is something you need to include, but it's a good way to bring them into the world, I guess.
So in the next 6 issues, we're going to meet some other very interesting new people. I think this is where we meet. Do we want to give it away, or do we want to wait till the episode?
I haven't gone ahead yet.
Okay, then I won't spoil anything, but we're gonna meet some real X-Men mainstays, and I think it'll be interesting to talk about like how some of these villains have stuck around and how others have not at all. But right now, like, the Vanisher isn't a huge part of the X-Men story, but he pops up here and there, and then everybody else we've met so far becomes massive parts of the X-Men story. So I think that's interesting. I am reading this in trade paperback. Like I said, I'm reading the Mighty Marvel Masterworks collection.
Nice.
They're great. Like $15.99 for 10 original issues. Really, like, all enhanced. It's great shit. But you are reading this in original issues that you bought at auction for $2 billion.
That's right. I am independently wealthy, and so I've been able to amass a legal collection of every X-Men comic that I'm reading through.
So there's something about your experience that's different than mine, is that you get to see ads.
I do get to see ads, and they're very exciting. I love a peek into the mind of what a 9-year-old boy in 1963 wants. There's a lot of hypnotism. There's a lot of ways to hypnotize people into doing your bidding.
Yeah.
A lot of little gadgets. I really want to break out like a time calculator and figure out what the cost of these things would be with inflation.
Okay.
But what fascinates me the most is how many of these ads are encouraging these children to get into door-to-door sales, as essentially pyramid schemes where they sell magazine subscriptions, they sell candy, they sell shoes, they sell knives, like just encouraging them to write in, get a free sales kit. They'll mail you a briefcase with 5 pairs of shoes in them, and you can go door to door showing people these shoes and selling them.
Pyramid scheme starter kit. Yeah,
for children.
That's my little pyramid scheme. Okay, well, I want to hear, as we go on, I want to hear your I think you pitched this to me as your Deals and Steals segment.
That's right. Pat's Deals and Steals.
As we go on, I want to hear more about the sort of stuff that's advertised in these books. But as it is now, I thank you guys for being here and listening to our first episode of the Mutant Menace. I hope you will hang with us as we kind of get our sea legs under us and we figure this thing out. Pat, where can people find you on the internet?
If you check out the Mutant Menace podcast, you might be able to find me. I'm hard to find. Pat Reber on some social mediums.
I think I spend most of my time hanging out these days on Blue Sky. You can find me, Matt Aukamp, AUKAMP. You can also check out my podcast about video games that I do with Pushing Up Roses. It's called Save Your Game. And Pat, what sort of, I feel like we need, maybe not even the same every episode, but I feel like we do need some sort of sign off. Oh, also email us mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. And because this is the first episode, we could use a fucking blitz of support. If you've listened to this and you like us, rate us on Spotify, rate us on Apple Podcast, rate us on whatever fucking podcast app you use, comment on YouTube, like us on YouTube, share it everywhere, right? This is the first episode, like, legitimately, if this podcast is going to have some success and we are going to keep doing it for a long time, now would be like the critical time to show your support, because now is the time we could get on new and notable lists and all that boring stuff. But we hope you'll come back to us next week, where we'll be checking out issues like 7 through 12. Pat, how do we say goodbye to people? Like, what's our
Is this the question you were going to ask me 2 minutes ago?
I forget. No, yes, it is. What is like, what should our sign off be?
I started thinking about this and then forgot to keep thinking about it. To me, yeah, go ahead.
No, please, no, you.
No, it's actually a call to action, so it doesn't work to sign off.
Okay, all right. Okay, how about this? Why don't we pick the dumbest quote from each selection of issues? Whoa! What if we both do it? You pick your favorite dumb quote from the selection of issues, and I will pick my favorite dumb quote from the selection of issues, and we'll say them back to back, and then we're out.
Okay.
I have a feeling I know what yours is going to be.
Pulling from the page that I'm currently looking at.
Oh, and also, thanks Krills Wilson for our intro and outro music.
And always remember, there's no law against having intentions.
And as always, one side, you slow-moving bunglers.
Good night, everybody.